I want you to visualize a countdown. It's a scenario that plays out in hospitals probably 100,000 times a day. But if you're the one on the table, it feels like the only moment in the world.
It's intensely personal.
You're lying on a narrow stretcher. It's uncomfortable. The air is sterile and freezing cold, and it's cold on purpose. The lights are aggressively bright. They just bleach out everything else. And there is a stranger standing over you, someone you met maybe 10 minutes ago in a holding bay, holding a plastic mask over your face.
And they give you that classic instruction, the one everyone knows from the movies.
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to count backwards from 10.
Right, 10, 9, 8, and then it's not like falling asleep in front of the TV. The world doesn't just fade out or get fuzzy.
No, it's a switch.
It cuts to black. It is absolute, profound nothingness. There is no dreaming. There is no sense of time passing. You could be under for an hour or a week, and subjectively, it's the same instant. You wake up groggy, stitched up, missing an organ, or maybe with a new piece of hardware screwed into your spine. We call this going to sleep.
Which is, quite frankly, the greatest euphemism in all of modern medicine.
Exactly. Because looking at the pharmacology we have on the desk today, that is not sleep. Sleep is a restorative, active biological process. It has architecture.
It's not even close to sleep.
Yeah.
If we are being physiologically honest, and that is the goal here, what we are describing is a drug-induced, reversible coma. We are taking a human being to the absolute brink of biological death.
To the brink.
We are suppressing the brainstem. We are often paralyzing the diaphragm so you can't breathe on your own. We are ablating the reflexes that stop you from choking on your own saliva.
And we do all of this why? So a surgeon can inflict what would otherwise be lethal physical trauma upon you to fix a problem.
Correct. We take you to the edge of the cliff, hold you there for 4 hours while someone rummages around inside your thoracic cavity, and then, and this is the real magic trick, we have to bring you back safely.
That is the high wire act we are unpacking today. Welcome to the deep dive. This is Pharma 21, General Anesthetics, Consciousness, Control, and Letting Go.
And to guide us through this, we aren't just skimming a web page. We are synthesizing two absolute titans of the literature.
We're combining the what and the why.
On one hand, we have Katzung's Basic and Clinical Pharmacology in the chapter on general anesthetics. Think of Katzung as the flight manual. It tells you which buttons to push, the safety protocol, the clinical dosage, the immediate effects. It gives us the scaffolding.
And on the other side?
The heavyweight. Goodman and Gilman's, the pharmacological basis of therapeutics, also its chapter on general anesthetics. This is the mechanics schematic of the engine. This tells us why the buttons work down to the molecular level. It's the physics and the chemistry of consciousness itself.
So Katzung tells us how to drive the car, and Goodman and Gilman explains how the internal combustion engine actually works.
Precisely. And I want to add a disclaimer right up front because we are talking about potent agents. This discussion is a conceptual map. It is an interpretive synthesis.
It is not a textbook substitute.
Not at all. It is not a substitute for reading the texts. The therapeutic index of these drugs, and we'll define that later, but it's the gap between the dose that works and the dose that kills you, is terrifyingly narrow. So please, use this to understand the concepts, but read the chapters for the practice.
Deal. We have a massive mission today. We are breaking this down into 4 big pillars.
First, we need to redefine the problem. We need to understand that anesthesia isn't a single drug. It's a specific physiological state composed of 5 distinct goals. We have to achieve all 5.
Second, we have to solve a mystery, the mechanism. How do these drugs actually work? And spoiler alert, for a long time, the leading scientific theory involved olive oil.
The Meyer-Overton rule.
Yeah.
We'll get to why we've largely moved past that to specific protein targets like GABA and NMDA receptors.
Third, we have to do the math, the kinetics. This is where it gets really counterintuitive. We need to explain why a gas that is less soluble in blood actually works faster.
The solubility paradox. We'll make it make sense.
I hope so. It breaks my brain every time.
And finally, we'll open the toolbox and look at the agents themselves. Propofol, ketamine, the volatile gases. We'll learn which tool to use for which job.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Or actually way before the beginning, because Katzung gives us a bit of a history lesson. Before 1846, surgery was, well, it was a horror show.
It was essentially torture. There's no other word for it.
All right.
Katzung mentions that for centuries, we relied on physical methods. They would use extreme cold to numb a limb, or nerve compression, or, and this is truly brutal, cerebral concussion.
Wait, like hitting someone in the head?
Literally knocking them out to perform a procedure. That was a legitimate technique. Or they used plant-based concoctions things like henbane or mandrake, or just massive doses of opium and alcohol.
But the dosing must have been a wild guess.
A complete guess.
Yeah.
You either had a patient who was awake and screaming or a patient who was dead from overdoser. It wasn't true anesthesia. The modern era really kicks off on October 16, 1846, with the public demonstration of ether at Mass General Hospital.
The famous ether dome.
That was the turning point. The surgeon, John Collins Warren, finished the procedure and turned to the audience and said, "Gentlemen, this is no humbug." And the world changed.
But since then, we've realized that just knocking someone out isn't enough. If I drink a bottle of whiskey, I might pass out, but I definitely wouldn't want someone cutting into my abdomen.
Exactly. The whiskey drinker might be unconscious, but their body is still reacting. Their muscles are tight. Their heart rate is spiking. They're having a massive stress response.
We're fighting it.
They're fighting it.
Yeah.
So through the synthesis of our sources, we define the modern anesthetic state not as one thing, but as 5 specific components. These are the goals.
Let's walk through the big 5.
First, obviously, is unconsciousness. Some people call it hypnosis. The patient must be unaware.
That's the main event.
It's the one everyone thinks of. Second is amnesia. You cannot recall the trauma of surgery. This is crucial because it is possible, terrifyingly, to be unconscious but still form implicit memories if we aren't careful.
Which is the stuff of nightmares. Waking up with a vague sense of horror you can't place.
Precisely. Post-traumatic stress from an operation you don't remember. Third is analgesia, pain relief.
Right. No pain.
And this is a trap for students. Many general anesthetics, like propofol or the gases, are not inherently analgesics. They are hypnotics. They put you to sleep, but they don't stop the pain signals from traveling up the spinal cord.
Wait, hold on. So you're asleep, but your body still feels the pain?
Your brain doesn't process it consciously, but your autonomic nervous system absolutely does. Your heart rate shoots up, your blood pressure spikes, you might sweat. That brings us to the 4th point, autonomic attenuation. We need to stop the body's reflex to go into shock during surgery.
So you have to blunt that stress response.
You have to. If the surgeon is pulling on the intestines, your body wants to react violently. We need to control that, keep things stable.
And the 5th?
Immobility, also called akinesia. The surgeon cannot work if the abdominal muscles are twitching every time the scalpel touches skin. We need the patient to be flaccid, completely still.
So we have these 5 goals: unconsciousness, amnesia, analgesia, immobility, and autonomic control. Does one drug do it all? Is there a super drug?
Not safely, not anymore. In the old days, with ether or chloroform, you could technically achieve all 5 if you gave enough of it. But the dose required to get total immobility would also depress the heart so much you might kill the patient. The toxicity was too high.
The margin for error was non-existent.
Exactly. So the modern solution is the concept of balanced anesthesia.
A cocktail.
It's a cocktail approach. Instead of using a massive dose of one drug, a sledgehammer, we use several scalpels. We use propofol to induce sleep, that's hypnosis and amnesia. We use fentanyl, an opioid, specifically for the pain, that's analgesia. We use rocuronium, a paralytic, to ensure immobility. We might add midazolam for extra amnesia and anxiety relief.
It's like cooking. You don't just use one ingredient to get sweet, salty, and sour. You mix them so you don't overpower the dish with just salt.
That's a perfect analogy. By attacking each pillar with a specific drug, we can use smaller, safer doses of each. We maximize efficacy and minimize toxicity. It's all about that balance.
Before we move to the mechanics, I want to clarify the difference between anesthesia and sedation, because we hear terms like twilight sleep or conscious sedation. Where is the line?
It's less of a line and more of a gradient, but there is a distinct cliff edge. Katsung distinguishes monitored anesthesia care, or MSE, from general anesthesia.
And in MSE, what's the state?
In MSE, you are groggy, maybe you don't care about the pain, but, and this is critical, you maintain your own airway. You are breathing for yourself. If your tongue falls back, you move it. If you have a secretion, you cough, you have protective reflexes.
And general anesthesia.
We take all of that away, we cross the line, but the danger zone is deep sedation. That is the cliff edge. In deep sedation, you're not quite under general, but you might lose your airway reflexes.
That's where things go wrong.
That's where the patient who was just supposed to be a little sleepy for a colonoscopy stops breathing. The difference between a relaxed patient and a dead patient can be a few milligrams of drug. It's a space that demands profound respect.
A sobering thought. Okay, let's unpack the how, the mechanism. You mentioned earlier that for a long time we thought anesthetics worked like olive oil. That sounds culinary, not scientific.
It is the unicary theory, or more famously, the Meyer-Overton rule. This dominated pharmacology for the first half of the 20th century, and it was based on this incredibly strong correlation.
What was the correlation?
Scientists noticed a nearly perfect straight-line relationship. If you took a gas and measured how well it dissolved in lipid fat or in the lab experiments olive oil, that number directly predicted its potency as an anesthetic.
So the more fat-soluble, the more potent.
Exactly. The theory was that these drugs, being lipophilic, just dissolved into the fatty lipid bilayer of the brain cells. Imagine the cell wall is this fluid mosaic of fat molecules. The theory said the anesthetic drugs just shoved their way in there, causing the membrane to expand or get gunked up.
And that gunking up did what?
They thought it physically squeezed or distorted the crucial ion channels shut. No specific target, no lock and key, just a crude physical disruption, like putting on a thick pair of gloves and trying to use a key. It implied that anesthesia wasn't a biological receptor interaction, but a physical property of the universe.
Like getting a wine stain on a white shirt. It's just physics.
Right. It's a very elegant, simple idea. But Goodman and Gilman points out the reasons it fell apart. There were critical exceptions to the rule.
There's rebuttal.
The first big one was the cutoff effect.
What's that?
Okay, so if you take a homologous series of alcohols, for instance, a carbon chain, and you keep making it longer, it gets more and more oil soluble.
So according to the olive oil theory, it should get more and more potent as an anesthetic.
It should. And it does, up to a point. Then suddenly you add one more carbon, and the potency drops to 0. Even though it is more soluble in oil, it is 0 anesthetic effect.
So if it was just gumming at the wall, it should work better. But because size matters, it implies it has to fit into a specific pocket.
Exactly. It got too big to fit in the lock. The second, and maybe the final blow to the theory was enantiomers.
Mirror molecules.
Right. We have drugs that are chemically identical, same atoms, exact same solubility in oil, but they are shaped like a left and a right hand. They are non-superimposable mirror images.
And if it was just dissolving in oil, the shape shouldn't matter at all.
It should be completely irrelevant. But in reality, one enantiomer of a drug, say isoflurane, puts you to sleep, and the other might do nothing or worse, cause convulsions. That proved definitively that we are dealing with protein targets. We are dealing with specific locks and specific keys. The shape matters.
Okay, so we are targeting specific locks now. We've established it's not just grease. What are the main targets? Where are the locks?
We can group them into two broad strategies: enhancing the brake pedal of the brain or cutting the gas line.
Let's start with the brakes.
The primary brake pedal in the entire adult central nervous system is the GABA receptor. This is the target for a huge number of anesthetics.
Okay, let's get technical for a second. Why does a GABA receptor stop a brain from thinking? What's it doing?
The GABA receptor is a ligand-gated ion channel. Specifically, it's a chloride channel.
Chloride, okay.
Think of a neuron like a battery. To fire, to send a signal, a thought, a sensation, its internal charge has to cross a threshold. It has to become more positive. That's the spark, the action potential.
So you need positive charge to go.
Right. Chloride, or Cl, on the periodic table is a negatively charged ion. When the GABA receptor is activated, it opens a pore in the cell membrane and lets chloride rush into the cell.
I see. So if you open the door for chloride,
You flood the room with negative charge. The inside of the neuron becomes more negative, moving it further away from that firing threshold. We call this hyperpolarization. You're basically anchoring the cell in a negative silent state. It's much, much harder to get it to fire.
and propofol does this.
Propofol, etomidate, barbiturates, and the volatile gases, they all work here. But here's the nuance that both texts emphasize. They don't necessarily open the channel themselves. They are positive allosteric modulators.
What does that mean in plain English?
It means they don't sit in the driver's seat. They don't pretend to be the neurotransmitter GABA. They bind to a different allosteric site on the receptor protein.
They grease the brake pedal.
That's a great way to put it. They bind to the receptor and change its shape, so that when the brain's natural GABA shows up, the channel opens wider and stays open longer. They make the brain's own natural inhibitory system super efficient.
So a light tap on the brakes from the body's own GABA slams the car to a stop.
Exactly. And that powerful inhibition, particularly in the cerebral cortex, is what leads to unconsciousness. G&G also points out there are glycine receptors, which are also chloride channels. They're particularly important in the spinal cord and brainstem. And enhancing these likely contributes to that immobility factor, preventing the motor signals from getting out.
Okay, so that's the brakes. What about cutting the gas line?
This is where ketamine lives. The main gas pedal, or excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, is glutamate. And one of its key receptors is the NMDA receptor.
And ketamine blocks this.
It's a non-competitive antagonist. It literally plugs the channel, it sits in the pore of the receptor, and prevents ions from flowing, even when glutamate is bound. It's like putting a cork in the bottle. It prevents the excitatory signal from getting through.
So propofol boosts the stop signal, and ketamine blocks the go signal.
A vivid way to put it. There's one more target mentioned in Goodman and Gilman that's important, especially for the halogenated gases.
Yeah.
The 2-pore potassium channels, or things like TREC and TASC channels.
Potassium channels.
These are leak channels. The gases seem to pry them open. Now, potassium, K plus A, is a positive ion, and there's a lot of it inside the cell. If you open a leak channel for potassium,
Positive charge leaks out.
positive charge leaks out, and losing positive charge has the same effect as gaining negative charge. The cell becomes hyperpolarized, more negative, harder to fire. So we're hitting the neuron from all sides.
Yeah.
Shutting down excitation at NMDA, boosting inhibition at GABA, and leaking out the positive current through potassium channels. It's a multi-pronged attack on neuronal excitability.
Where is this all happening? Is the whole brain just turning off uniformly?
No, and that's what's so fascinating. It's remarkably specific. G and G highlights the thalamus. Think of the thalamus as the central relay station, or the switchboard for all sensory input. Almost everything you see, hear, or feel goes to the thalamus first before it gets routed to the conscious cortex.
So you pull the plug on the switchboard.
Anesthetics do exactly that. They profoundly suppress metabolism in the thalamus. The eyes might see, the ears might hear, but the signal never reaches the executive suite. The hippocampus is also hit hard. That's the brain's RAM, where new memories are written. Suppressing that gives us amnesia. And the spinal cord is where we think the immobility comes from. It's a network-level disconnection.
It's a complete targeted dismantling of the self. Okay, let's move to the practical stuff. The drugs. We generally split these into 2 families. The IV drugs we use to get you to sleep, and the gases we use to keep you asleep. Let's start with the IV agents. The front door.
Right. 4V agents are typically used for induction of anesthesia. You want something fast, smooth, and pleasant. You don't want the patient struggling or remembering that transition. So these drugs are designed to be highly lipophilic. They love fat.
Why does loving fat make them fast?
Because the blood-brain barrier, the protective wall around the brain, is itself a lipid barrier. It's a fatty membrane. If a drug loves fat, it slips right through that wall with no resistance.
No.
We're talking 1 arm-to-brain circulation time, about 30 seconds.
But here is the kinetic puzzle that seems to stump every medical student. If I give you a bolus of propofol, you go to sleep in 30 seconds, you wake up in about 5 to 10 minutes.
Correct.
But the half-life of propofol, the time it takes the liver to metabolize it, is much longer than that. It can be hours. So if the drug is still in my body, why did I wake up?
This is the fundamental concept of redistribution. And to get your head around it, you have to stop thinking of the body as one big sack of water. You have to view it as a multi-compartment model. Let's use an analogy.
I love a good analogy. Walk me through it.
Imagine the body as 3 distinct buckets, connected by pipes of different sizes. Bucket number 1 is the vessel-rich group. This is the brain, the heart, the kidneys, the liver. It is a physically small bucket, only about 10% of your body mass. But the pipe leading to it is massive. It receives 75% of your cardiac output.
So when I inject the drug into the vein, it's like opening a fire hose into that small first bucket.
Instantly. The brain bucket fills up to the brim. The concentration of the drug in the brain spikes. You go to sleep.
Okay. But the heart keeps pumping. The blood keeps moving.
Right. Now, the blood circulates to bucket 2, the muscle group. This is a bigger bucket, maybe 50% of your body mass, but the pipe leading to it is smaller. It gets less blood flow. And finally, bucket 3, the fat group. This bucket is enormous. It can hold a ton of our lipophilic drug, but the pipe feeding it is a tiny, narrow straw. Fat has terrible blood flow.
So at the 5-minute mark, what happens? Why do I wake up?
Physics happens. Nature abhors a concentration gradient. At 1 minute, the brain is full of drug. The muscle and fat are empty. So the drug starts to move from the area of high concentration, the brain and blood, into the area of low concentration, which is the muscles.
It drains out of the brain into the muscles.
Exactly. The drug flows back into the blood, which then carries it to fill up the big, empty muscle bucket. You wake up not because the drug left your body, but because it simply left the brain. The drug is just sitting in your thigh muscles now, doing nothing to your consciousness.
That makes perfect sense for a single shot, a bolus. But what if we keep the infusion running, say for a 6-hour surgery?
Now you enter the danger zone, or at least the more complex realm of context-sensitive halftime.
Which sounds like a terrifying variable.
It is. It asks the question, after stopping an infusion of a certain duration, How long does it take for the plasma concentration to drop by half? And the context is the duration of the infusion.
So if you run an infusion for 6 hours, what happens to our buckets?
Eventually, the muscle bucket gets full. And given enough time, even that giant fat bucket being fed by that tiny straw starts to fill up. All the buckets become saturated with the drug.
So when you turn the drip off,
The drug has nowhere to redistribute to. The muscles are full, the fat is full. Now, the only way for the drug to leave the brain is to be metabolized and eliminated by the liver. Redistribution is over. Now you're dependent on elimination.
and this is where the specific drug choice matters immensely.
Hugely. Propofol is the hero here. If you look at a graph of its context-sensitive halftime, the line stays relatively flat. Even after hours of infusion, its halftime is short. The liver is so efficient at chewing it up that even when the buckets are full, you wake up relatively fast. It's a clean
A
wake-up.
cautionary tale.
Tiopental, the old barbiturate. Its context-sensitive halftime is a nightmare. After about 30 minutes, the curve shoots straight up. If you run thiopental for a few hours, the fat stores get completely saturated. When you turn it off, that fat acts like a massive drug depot, slowly leaching thiopental back into the blood for hours or even days.
Days.
The patient might not wake up for days. That's why thiopental is almost never used for maintenance anesthesia anymore. It's strictly for induction or very specific neuro cases where you want that long-lasting effect.
Okay, let's run through the cast of characters for 5e agents. We've mentioned propofol. It's the standard. Why is it the king?
It's often called the milk of amnesia. It looks like milk because it's a lipid emulsion, usually in soybean oil and egg lecithin. It works primarily on GABA. It's fast on, fast off, and this is a big bonus that cuts some highlights. It has antiemetic properties. It actively prevents nausea and vomiting.
Which, if you've ever had surgery, you know is a godsend. But nothing is perfect. What's the catch?
A few big ones. One, it burns on injection. It hurts going in. Two, and this is the major one, it causes significant hypotension. It's a potent vasodilator, so it opens up all your blood vessels, and it's a direct myocardial depressant, so it weakens the heart's pumping action.
So it drops your blood pressure from 2 different directions.
Exactly. If you have a trauma patient who is already bleeding out and has low blood pressure, propofol could bottom them out and cause cardiac arrest. It's a dangerous drug in the wrong setting.
And there's that rare toxicity mentioned in Katsung Pri's.
Propofol infusion syndrome. It happens with very high doses over long periods, usually in the ICU setting. For reasons we don't fully understand, the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cells, fail. You get a catastrophic metabolic acidosis, muscle breakdown called rhabdomyolysis, and heart failure. It's rare, but often fatal. You have to respect the dose limits.
So if propofol is risky for the unstable heart, what do we use? What's the alternative for that trauma patient?
We use etomidate.
The heart saver?
That's his nickname. It's the hemodynamically stable option. It also works by modulating GABA, but it has almost zero effect on blood pressure or cardiac output. You can give it to a patient with severe heart failure or who's in shock, and they just drift off to sleep without a single blip on the heart rate or blood pressure monitor.
Sounds perfect. Why don't we use it for everyone? It seems safer.
It had a dark secret. Adrenal suppression. Etomidate potently inhibits an enzyme in the adrenal gland called 11-beta-hydroxylase. This enzyme is critical for making cortisol.
And cortisol is the body's main stress hormone.
Right. A single induction dose of etomidate can knock out your body's ability to produce cortisol for up to 24 hours. In a septic patient, someone with a massive infection, they need that cortisol spike to survive the stress. Taking that away is controversial and may increase mortality. So it's a trade-off. Plus, it has very high rates of post-operative nausea and vomiting.
Okay, next up is the wild card, the outlier, ketamine.
Ketamine is completely different from the others. It's a dissociative anesthetic. As we said, it blocks the NMDA receptor. The patient doesn't look like they're asleep in the same way.
What do they look like?
Their eyes might be open. They might have a rapid twitching of the eyes. They might make noises or move a little. But their conscious brain is completely dissociated from sensory input. They're not processing the world.
And unlike propofol, it doesn't drop the blood pressure.
Just the opposite. It is a sympathomimetic. It tricks the body into releasing its own catecholamines, like adrenaline. It directly boosts heart rate and blood pressure. It is a fantastic drug for trauma patients or anyone in shock.
And uniquely among these induction agents, it treats pain.
Yes, it is a potent analgesic. Its pain-relieving effects last longer than its hypnotic effects, and it's a bronchodilator. If you have an asthmatic patient who is actively wheezing, Ketamine can open up their airways.
It sounds like a wonder drug. Supports the heart, kills pain, helps breathing. Why isn't it the standard?
Emergence delirium. When adults wake up from ketamine, they can have vivid, often terrifying hallucinations, nightmares, an out-of-body experience of feeling like they are dying or floating in space.
K-hole.
Exactly. We often have to co-administer a benzodiazepine like midazolam just to smooth out the landing and prevent that psychological trauma. It's a powerful tool, but it requires careful handling.
Okay, moving from the veins to the lungs, let's talk about the inhalational agents, the gases.
The maintenance crew, we usually induce with a fast IV agent, secure the airway, and then switch to a gas to keep the patient under for the duration of the surgery.
And here we have the solubility paradox. This is one of those concepts in pharmacology that just feels completely backwards.
It trips everyone up. The rule, as stated in both Katzung and G&G, is a gas that is highly soluble in blood, meaning it loves to dissolve in the blood, is slow to work. A gas that is poorly soluble, it hates being in blood, is fast.
Explain that, because my intuition says if it dissolves well, it gets carried to the brain faster.
And that's the logical trap. The goal is not to get the drug into the blood. The goal is to raise the partial pressure of the gas in the brain to match what's in the lungs. Blood is just the delivery truck.
Okay.
So let's use the conveyor belt analogy again. Imagine a highly soluble gas, like the old halothane. The blood is like a conveyor belt made of a giant dry sponge.
I'm pouring water, which is the gas, onto a sponge conveyor belt.
Exactly. What does the sponge do? It soaks up all the water. You have to pour gallons and gallons before the sponge is completely saturated and finally starts to drip water off the end onto the brain. The partial pressure, the push driving the gas into the brain, cannot build up because the blood just keeps soaking it all up. Induction is slow.
And the insoluble gas.
That's a modern gas like Deslorraine. Think of that conveyor belt as being made of non-stick Teflon. You pour a drop of water on it.
It doesn't soak in at all. It beads up.
It sits right on top and slides immediately to the brain. The blood refuses to hold it, so the partial pressure in the blood rises instantly to match what's in the lungs. That pressure is then delivered straight to the brain. Fast on, fast off.
That is a brilliant visualization. So soluble means the blood is a greedy sponge. Insoluble means the blood is just a slick conveyor.
Precisely. And in modern anesthesia, we want Teflon. We want speed and control.
We measure the potency of these gases with a metric called MA.
The minimum alveolar concentration. It's the gold standard for potency. 1 MSE is defined as the concentration of gas in the alveoli of the lungs needed to prevent movement in 50% of patients in response to a surgical incision.
Wait, 50%. So if you give me 1 MSE of a gas, there is a coin flip's chance I'm going to jump when the surgeon cuts me.
Correct. That's why 1 MIC is a statistical value, not the clinical dose. We usually run the vaporizer at 1.2 or 1.3 MA to ensure that 95% or more of people don't move. But MAC is incredibly useful because it is additive.
Additive.
If I give you 0.5 MAC of isoflurane and 0.5 MSC of nitrous oxide, the total effect is 1 MAC. It allows us to mix and match agents to get the benefits of each while minimizing their side effects.
Let's talk about the specific gases. Let's start with nitrous oxide, laughing gas.
It's the only one that's a true gas at room temperature. The others are volatile liquids that we have to vaporize. Nitrous is unique. It has very low solubility, so it's super fast, a Teflon belt, but it is very weak. Its MSE is 104%.
Wait, you'd have to give more than 100% of the gas to get to 1 MF. That leaves no room for oxygen.
Exactly. You would suffocate the patient before you could achieve surgical anesthesia with nitrous alone. So it is always used as an adjunct, an add-on. We might use it at 50% concentration to get 0.5 MSE, and then we only need another 0.5 MAC of a more potent gas. But it has baggage.
What kind of baggage?
It expands air-filled spaces. Because it's so much more soluble than the nitrogen in the air, it rushes into any air-filled cavity in the body much faster than nitrogen can get out.
So the pocket gets bigger.
Much bigger.
Right.
It can turn a small pneumothorax, a collapsed lung, into a lethal tension pneumothorax. It can rupture a bowel if there's an obstruction. It's a major contraindication in those settings.
Then we have the modern volatile agents. Isoflurane, sevoflurane, disulfur, they are all halogenated ethers. What's the difference between them?
It's mostly about smell, speed, and cost. Isoflurane is the old workhorse. It's cheap and reliable, but it has a pungent, terrible smell. If you try to put a mask with isoflurane on a child for induction, they will cough, gag, and can go into laryngospasm.
Yep.
Their airway will clamp shut.
So good for maintenance once the tube is in, bad for starting.
Right. Sevoflurane is the opposite. It has a sweet, non-irritating smell. It is the gold standard for mask induction, especially in pediatrics. It's also fairly fast, low solubility, so you get a smooth on and a relatively quick off.
And deflurane.
the speed demon. It has the lowest blood gas solubility of all of them. The wake-ups are incredibly fast, but it is extremely pungent, very irritating to the airway, and it boils at near room temperature. You need a special, expensive, heated, and pressurized vaporizer just to deliver it.
So it's the high-performance, high-cost option?
That's a good way to think about it.
Are these gases toxic? I mean, we are essentially asking patients to breathe industrial solvents for hours.
For the most part, they are remarkably safe, but there are specific concerns. Sevoflurane can react with the CO2 absorber in the anesthesia machine if it gets old and dried out.
The stuff that scrubs the carbon dioxide from the air so we can rebreathe it?
Right. If that absorbent is desiccated, sevoflurane can degrade into something called compound A, which was found to be toxic to the kidneys in rats. It's never been definitively proven to hurt humans, but as a precaution, we don't use very low fresh gas flows with it.
And diflurane.
Desflurane and isoflurane, if the absorbent is very dry, can actually degrade to produce carbon monoxide. So you have to maintain your equipment.
The bottom line is, check your absorbers.
Always.
We're into the final stretch here. We've drugged the brain, but these drugs go everywhere in the body. What is the systemic toll of anesthesia?
It's significant. Let's start with the cardiovascular system. Almost every anesthetic, IV or inhaled, with the major exceptions of ketamine and etomidate, is a cardiovascular depressant.
How so?
They cause vasodilation, they open up the pipes, lowering blood pressure, and they cause direct myocardial depression. They weaken the pump itself.
So blood pressure drops?
And normally, your body would fight that. Your baroreceptors in your neck would sense the drop and trigger a reflex to speed up the heart. But anesthetics blunt that reflex. So the pressure just drifts down and the body doesn't fight back. Then there's the respiratory system. They all depress the drive to breathe. The brain's response to rising CO2 levels is severely blunted.
Which is why we need a ventilator.
Exactly. And even if we breathe for them perfectly, the high oxygen we often use can cause absorption atelectasis.
What is that?
Normally, the air in your lungs is mostly nitrogen, which isn't absorbed. It acts like a scaffold, holding the little air sacs, the alveoli, open. When we give 100% oxygen, we wash out all that nitrogen. The oxygen is rapidly absorbed into the blood, and without the nitrogen stent, the alveoli can collapse like wet paper bags.
And temperature. I know operating rooms are cold, but the patient gets even colder.
Hypothermia is a major enemy. The drugs cause vasodilation, which turns your skin into a giant radiator that dumps heat into the cold room. Plus, they turn down your metabolic furnace by about 30%. A cold patient bleeds more because their clotting enzymes don't work, and they're more susceptible to infections. Keeping the patient warm is a huge part of the job.
We also have to mention the scary genetic one, malignant hyperthermia.
A rare but terrifying genetic time bomb. In susceptible people, all of the volatile gases and the paralytic succinylcholine can trigger a runaway calcium release inside muscle cells.
What does that do?
The muscles lock up in a state of extreme rigidity. Their metabolic rate skyrockets. Temperature can spike to 108, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It's an inferno inside the body, and it's rapidly fatal unless treated instantly with a specific antidote drug called dantrolene.
Okay, let's apply this. I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. I want to see if I've learned anything. I'm the resident, you're the attending.
Let's do it.
Scenario A. A 25-year-old trauma victim from a car crash, massive internal bleeding. His blood pressure is 70/40. He's scared and fighting. I need to put him out fast to get an airway. My instinct says propofol because it's clean and fast.
And you just killed him.
Damn. Okay, why?
He's hypovolemic. He's lost a lot of blood. He's surviving purely on an adrenaline-fueled sympathetic surge. Propofol is a vasodilator and a heart depressant. You give it, you cut his only lifeline, his sympathetic drive. His pressure will go from 70 to 0. He will arrest.
Okay, lesson learned. What should I have used?
Ketamine. It supports the blood pressure, it stimulates the heart, and it keeps him alive while you secure the airway. Or etomidate for its cardiac stability. Never propofol in that patient.
Right. Scenario B, a patient with severe asthma needs surgery. They are audibly wheezing a bit in the pre-op area.
Okay, what are you thinking?
Well, I need to avoid anything that irritates the airway, so probably not disflurane.
Good. Disflurane is a pungent airway irritant. It will make the wheezing worse, maybe even cause bronchospasm.
For the gas, I'd choose sevoflurane because I remember you saying it's a profound bronchodilator. It might actually treat the asthma. And for induction, ketamine is also a great choice for the same reason.
Excellent. Perfect choices. Both ketamine and sevoflurane are therapeutic for this patient.
Scenario C, neurosurgery. The patient has a large brain tumor and high intracranial pressure, or ICP. The brain is swollen and tight inside the skull.
The surgeon needs you to make the brain smaller to give them room to work.
So I want to decrease blood flow to the brain. Ketamine is out because that increases cerebral blood flow.
Correct. Ketamine would make the brain swell even more. A disastrous choice.
So I'd use propofol. I remember you said it constricts cerebral vessels and lowers the brain's metabolic rate. It shrinks the brain volume.
Exactly. Or a barbiturate like thiopental. Both are cerebral vasoconstrictors. So you see, the drug that could kill the trauma patient is the drug that could save the neurosurgery patient. It's all about context.
So propofol is the enemy of the bleeding heart, but the best friend of the swollen brain.
Precisely.
We've talked about going under, but what about coming back? Emergence.
Emergence is not just the movie running in reverse. It is a physiological storm. As the drugs wear off, the pain, which has been there the whole time, suddenly hits the conscious brain. The sympathetic nervous system wakes up screaming.
So what do you see?
Hypertension, tachycardia. The patient might be shivering violently, not just from being cold, but from spinal cord reflexes reemerging. There can be confusion, agitation. It can be a very violent process.
The art of anesthesia is timing that landing.
It's landing a 747 on a short runway in a crosswind. You have to time the off switch on the gas so the patient is breathing and safe, but not wide awake and in agony before the pain control is on board. It requires just as much skill as the takeoff.
This has been a massive synthesis. If we boil it all down, anesthesia is really a controlled overdose.
That's the absolute reality. The therapeutic index, that gap between the dose that works and the dose that kills, for many of these agents, is between 2 and 4.
Meaning if the effective dose is 1 pill, 4 pills would be lethal.
Imagine if taking 4 Tylenol instead of 2 would kill you. That is the margin of error an anesthesiologist works with every single day with every single patient. It demands constant vigilance.
To wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with that thought you mentioned at the beginning, implicit memory, the ghost in the machine.
It's a humbling and slightly terrifying concept from the literature. Even when a patient is unconscious by all our clinical measures, no movement, stable vitals, the brain might still be recording information. The auditory pathways are often the last to go and the first to return.
So be careful what you say over the operating table.
Absolutely. But on a more profound philosophical level, if the thalamus is the switch for consciousness and we turn it off, where does the mind go? We are manipulating the very seat of the soul with fluorine atoms. We turn the person into a biological machine, an object, so they can be repaired, and then we have to turn them back into a person. It is the most profound pharmacological intervention we have.
A temporary reversible death to allow for a future life.
Well said.
If you want to see the chemical structures of those keys and the diagrams of those receptor locks, open Goodman and Gilman's chapter on general anesthetics. If you want the clinical tables, the MSC values, and the side-by-side drug comparisons, go to Katzung's chapter.
Read the sources. The map is not the territory. Use this to build the framework, then go to the texts to lay the foundation.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Stay curious.